Think back to your wedding day. When two people get married, two visions of the future become one shared dream. At least, that's how it was when Dick and I got married. Sometimes the dreams we carry inspire us. Then years go by and life changes, especially if your spouse has dementia. Now those same dreams weigh us down, and sometimes we have to let them go. Advertisements for some memory care facilities and some dementia service agencies don't help. Letting go of personal dreams and my frustration with the illusion in dementia care ads. That's what this episode, number 17, is all about. You're listening to My Spouse Has Dementia, a podcast that uses personal stories, occasional interviews, and simple rituals to support dementia caregiving spouses. My goal is to help us survive, because about 40% of us die first. I'm Zita Christian, writer, life cycle celebrant, widow. My husband had Alzheimer's. As a wedding officiant, I work with couples who see themselves as spiritual, not religious. They don't want a traditional ceremony. They don't want liturgy. They don't want readings. They want a ceremony that is unique, meaningful, and personal. That's what I create. At the heart of each ceremony I write is a love story. Sometime during the year before the wedding, I meet with the couple. I ask a lot of questions, and then I give them a questionnaire with dozens more questions. They have to email their answers to me before sharing them with each other. Having two sets of answers to the same questions shows me how they were influenced by the past, how their visions of the future align, and sometimes where that vision might encounter a roadblock. Almost always, their shared vision includes having a safe and comfortable home, children, good health, financial security, a satisfying career, spending quality time with their friends and family, and travel. Dick and I traveled. In addition to the vacations that we shared, I went to writers' conferences and he went on hiking trips with the Appalachian Mountain Club. He thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail in 1999, all 2,160 miles from Georgia to Maine. We always came home from our separate adventures with stories to share. When it came to dreams about our future, mine was inspired by the words of the poet Robert Browning. I know you'll recognize them. Grow old along with me. The best is yet to be. The last of life, for which the first was made. In my dream, Dick and I sat in wooden rocking chairs with comfy cushions. We'd be on the wraparound porch of a log cabin, sipping morning coffee or evening wine, gazing at the tranquil lake in front of us. We'd both be in our 90s, still active, still able to live on our own. We'd both die peacefully in our sleep on the same night. Yeah, I do know how unrealistic that dream is, but hey, it was my dream. Last year, I took an online workshop about goals. My motivation tank was pretty empty, and I thought that the workshop might be good for me. It was, just not in the way I expected. As part of the workshop, I created a vision board. Participants were instructed to gather images of what we desired for our future. We could take pictures from magazines, clip art, advertisements, photos, or whatever we could find. We could draw our own images. We could use AI. We arranged our images on a large piece of paper or poster board. The idea was that by visualizing a dream, we could recognize the steps we'd need to take to achieve the dream. I made a rough sketch of a log cabin in the woods next to a lake. Okay, no surprise. Flowers lined the walkway leading up to the porch, and I scattered little hearts all around the cabin, to suggest that the people who lived there or came to visit loved each other, or maybe would find love. I thought about the couples that I've married. I also had images to represent good health, financial security, and creative pursuits, this podcast being one of them. It wasn't until I completed my vision board that I realized there were no rocking chairs on the porch of the cabin. Sure, I could have added the chairs at that time, but I didn't, because the rocking chairs symbolized my husband and me growing old together, and that dream was gone. In that moment, the reality of my husband's death didn't hit hard like it did in the first 6 months after he died. No, this time I felt calm, quiet, sad, but accepting. I realized that holding on to the dream of that cabin would keep me from nurturing other visions I had put on the board. I want to grow this podcast and my other podcast, Ritual Recipes. I want to write another book. The idea has been brewing in the cauldron of my creativity for many years. It's about a special group of death doulas. So I created a new vision board. It has 2 microphones to represent my 2 podcasts. It has 2 books, the novel about the death doulas, and a memoir about what my husband's death taught me about life. Studying that second vision board, I realized it's also time to give up officiating weddings, or at least limit them to 3 or 4 a season, not 25. My days of having at least 1 wedding, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, almost every weekend during wedding season are over. In the past, I've driven to Newport, New York City, Long Island, Salem, Massachusetts, and lots of other places to guide a couple through that rite of passage. And then I'd bubble with joy for days after the wedding. But driving at night has become an issue for me. And now I worry, well, what if I get sick? I mean, really sick. In officiating more than 150, maybe 160 weddings by this time, I've had 4 couples where one spouse was fully aware that the other spouse already had a critical health situation that might require a caregiver at any time. I knew that the words "in sickness and in health" resonated deeply with those couples. Now I still have several weddings on my calendar. A few of them are for 2024. Couples book me early. But I'm not seeking more. In fact, I didn't seek these. Instead, I'll use my other podcast, Ritual Recipes, to share ideas about rituals for wedding ceremonies, vow renewals, baby blessings, and divorce. One dream dies, so another can be born. That's how it is. Chances are that as you're caring for your spouse with dementia, you are well aware of what you are giving up now. That means time to yourself. It means a long, hot shower. It means sleep. It might mean travel or socializing with friends. It might mean giving up your career. I'm telling you all this so you'll recognize that even after your loved one dies, you will continue to give things up. I'm not talking about sleep and showers and socializing. I'm talking about dreams. When that day comes, don't let the dream weigh you down. If it's a dream about life with you and your spouse, let it go. Create a new vision for your future. As my wise neighbor Helen said to me, keep living until you feel alive again. My vision board is aspirational. It shows a world I want to create. My aspirations have limits. Seeing them, accepting them, helps me move forward because a faulty foundation is both dangerous and deceptive. Advertisements are also aspirational. In an effort to sell a product or a service, advertisements show a world people want. I get it. But I have a problem with advertisements that promote a product or a service by selling a dream based on a faulty foundation. I'm talking about the way some memory care facilities and some caregiving agencies advertise what they offer, especially to caregivers whose spouses have dementia. To be specific, my issue isn't really with the facilities or the agencies themselves. It's with the way the facilities and agencies are advertised. I won't go so far as to say the advertising is deceptive, but I will say it's often sugar-coated, and that makes it an illusion. I know you've seen the commercials on television and maybe in brochures at your doctor's office. The people in those ads might be in a manicured garden, or in the kitchen of a cozy home, or in the lounge of a tastefully decorated memory care facility. You might see an old person walking with a cane. A young aide walks alongside. Both are smiling. Or an old person using a walker. A young aide walks alongside. Both are smiling. An old person in a wheelchair. A young aide pushes the chair. Both are smiling. An old person sits upright in a bed. A young aide fluffs up the pillows and straightens the blankets. Both are smiling. Sometimes the surroundings in those scenes include a swimming pool or a picnic table or a dining room where everyone is well-groomed. The men in button-down shirts, the women with tasteful necklaces and matching earrings. Absent in all those ads are the sad faces, the vacant eyes, the bony bodies slumped in wheelchairs, strapped in to keep them from falling. Some clutch baby dolls or stuffed animals. No, you don't see those images in the ads. The ads trouble me. They didn't mirror my reality, and for the last 7 months of my husband's life, we were fortunate to have the help of a phenomenal aide, Pamela. You see, as attentive and compassionate as she was, my husband was never that happy, congenial old man in the dementia care advertisements. What little cognitive awareness he had told him something terrible was happening to him. Sometimes he cried. He certainly didn't smile much. Those unrealistic, sugar-coated ads are just the tip of my frustration with how some memory care facilities and some dementia care agencies are advertised. Some of the ads aimed at couples might mean well, but they insult strong marriages. At first, I considered that my reaction might be extreme and not shared by other caregivers whose spouses have dementia. So I asked the members of my dementia support group, and I asked the members of my bereavement support group. They agreed with me. And granted, it was a small number in each group. Still, I think there's value. Here's what I'm talking about. You've read the messages in blogs and brochures. Depending on where you and your spouse are in the dementia journey, you've probably had at least one person from a memory care center or caregiving agency look you in the eye and say, as though they understand exactly how you feel, that they stand ready to take on the burdens of dementia care so that you can go back to just being his wife. To which I say, what do you think marriage is? One big date? That when things get tough, the spouse will bail? I'm sure that is the case for some people, but not the people I know. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I cared for my husband at home until he died. With the help of hospice, I turned the dining room into a bedroom. Through trial and error, and with the guidance of an experienced CNA, I learned how to care for my husband's physical needs. With the help of my neighbors and the local EMTs, I was able to keep my husband out of the ER after most of his falls. So my rant is not about whether a caregiver is physically weak or strong, emotionally delicate or resilient. I know people are different. Their experiences are different. Their physical capabilities are different. And my rant is not about whether or not you care for your spouse at home or you place your spouse in a memory care facility. Again, people are different. Their home situations are different. What kind of support they have is different. No, my rant is about advertising that assumes spouses don't want to take care of the personal needs of their spouse, or won't. And by personal, I'm talking about feeding, grooming, and that means fingernails, toenails, haircuts, shaving, nose hair. I'm talking about bathing, toileting needs of the spouse. That means helping a spouse on and off a toilet, wiping, applying ointment if needed to prevent a rash. Did I look forward to those tasks? Oh gosh, no. No, let's make that really clear. No. I just knew that my husband would be more comfortable with my help rather than help from a stranger. You see, as he lost more and more of himself, he got more and more anxious. I wanted to do everything I could to reassure him that he was safe and loved. If your spouse has only recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, listening to this episode right now might make you uncomfortable. And I understand. Let me just say, you will be surprised at what you can do and will do in that moment when someone you love needs your help. So here's my advice to advertising agencies representing memory care facilities and home health care agencies. Sell the facility or service by acknowledging the hard truth. Every caregiving spouse isn't a squeamish weakling who wrings her hands at the sight of urine or feces. If we don't have family or friends who can help us with those physical challenges, yes, we need professionals who can. What we don't need is for you to insult us and our strong marriages by implying that being a wife or husband is only about the good times. To bring this episode full circle, you may have a dream of caring for your spouse at home until he or she dies. If you have the support of family and friends, if you live in a neighborhood where people know you and your spouse and would recognize it if your spouse wandered off, or if you have the services of an aide who understands dementia, then maybe your dream will become a reality. Mine did, but I was lucky, and I know it. But if you don't have those resources, and your own health is deteriorating, set your pride aside and get serious about getting help. Join a support group, in person or online. You'll make connections. People share resources and tips. Talk to the social worker affiliated with your spouse's neurologist. If the office does not have a social worker in-house, ask for a referral. A social worker can help you find organizations that offer grants to help defray the cost of an aide. These grants aren't big, maybe a total of $500 each, but every little bit helps. Tell your family what's going on, how the disease has progressed, and ask for their help. Be clear about what you need. You might say, "Can you pick up some groceries for me? I have just a short list." Don't ignore the family and friends who live out of state. Delivery services can be arranged with a computer and a credit card. In most cases, family and friends want to help. They just don't know how. You might send an email or a text to a friend or family member saying, "I am frazzled beyond measure. If I had a magic wand, someone would show up at my door with enough lasagna for 2 nights. If your neighbor calls, says she's going to the grocery store, and asks if she can pick up something for you, say yes. Sometimes a couple of bananas and a few containers of yogurt are enough to get you and your spouse through a good part of the day. If your spouse is in the early stages, talk with your family doctor or the neurologist about physical and occupational therapy. Some of those organizations provide such therapy in the home. I remember when the therapist was standing at the kitchen counter with Dick, helping him with balancing exercises. Well, that's when I would run upstairs and get a quick shower. You have to get creative. In the United States, there are about 6 million people living with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. Worldwide, that number spikes to 55 million. While the numbers are huge, the awareness is not. Many people whose families have not yet been touched directly by Alzheimer's don't know that the disease erases more than the memory of a grandchild's name or the memory of how to tie a shoe. The disease erases the memory of how to speak, how to walk, how to swallow. I think I mentioned this statistic in an earlier episode, but it bears repeating. Between the year 2000 and the year 2017, deaths from heart disease decreased 9%. Good news. While deaths from Alzheimer's increased 145%. I'm recording this episode the first week of October. September was Alzheimer's Awareness Month. Here's what I'm aware of. Advertisements that show a patient with Alzheimer's smiling as an aide walks alongside as they tour a garden, or as the aide wheels the patient into a lovely dining room of a memory care facility. Those ads are masking the ugliness of the disease. Those ads are aspirational, like my vision board. But we need to get real. Is the truth gritty? Oh, you bet it is. If ever an ordeal is going to reveal just how strong you are, caregiving for a spouse with dementia is it. Make telling your story part of your radical self-care. If you aren't ready for that step yet, share this podcast, especially this episode, with someone who needs to know what you're going through. Share the link and say, please listen to this. I want to talk with you about it. It's important to me. Finally, when I say take good care of yourself, those words aren't fluffy. They're fierce because we need to survive. Thanks for listening.